For the development of any nation, rail has always been at the forefront. At the moment, in Australia, especially in New South Wales, we are the laughing stock of the world when it comes down to transport.
Just before the line was closed, there was a major re-sleepering program done. There were bridge building and repairs.
This rail is actually in very good condition. Even though we are standing on a straight piece of track, this rail shows very little signs of wear.
9,000 people came to the opening of the railway, and it was called the Line from Nowhere to Nowhere because it was our train for our region. Hi, today we're going to talk about the Casino to Murwillumbah railway line. When I talk to people in our community, I often find that they've given up on ever having the train back, and they feel quite despairing about it. They've been told that the cost is way too high and it's unaffordable, and that the condition of the line is really bad.
In 1858, there was a legislation passed in Parliament to form a Board of Commissioners with a Chief Commissioner to run the railway. Part of that act stated that there was to be no political interference with the Commissioners. The Chief Commissioner was answerable to Parliament. The work of the Board of Commissioners and the Commissioner himself enabled this state to have a world-renowned rail system. Rail was there to build this country, to build this state, and to maintain it. Things were going fine until political pressure started to interfere. And it interfered very slowly, but very deliberately into the system. Trucking companies, bus companies, they don't build their roads. They only go on them. They don't maintain the roads. But with the railways, they built them, they purchased the land, they built the bridges, they made the tunnels, they built the trains, and they maintained them. All of that industry here in Australia now, especially New South Wales, is virtually gone. Road lobbyists meet the politicians, pay to their political parties for favours for them.
When the line closed in 2004, I just thought, what a shame. You know, apparently it's unaffordable. It just didn't ever occur to me for a moment. Politicians might lie or be dishonest about something.
It served us well for 100 years, and by goodness, this railway service should continue to serve us in the future, shouldn't it? Yeah! Absolutely!
Public transport is a public service and it shouldn't ever be meant to make money. The trains in Sydney don't make money.
If the Queensland Government gets the logic of extending its rail service south to the Gold Coast, I don't understand why Labor doesn't get the message about the need for a Casino Murwillumbah link that goes well beyond Murwillumbah.
We've put $75 million on the table, and we've said if the federal government matches that dollar for dollar, we'll immediately commence the work to reopen the track.
They're going to rip out a lot of the lights, where they're going to basically disable the track to be used. I mean, this is vandalism of the first order.
Here we have a government that wants to take away what little we do have. Shame on them.
More trains, less cars!
All this protests, all this good-meaning intent by the locals of the North Coast means zip, it seems, to Michael Costa or to Bob Carr. I mean, we should be getting more people onto rail off roads.
Well, the Coalition is determined to reopen the Casino Murwillumbah rail line, not just to provide a commuter service, but also because of the economic benefits it can provide to the area.
Every election after that, the Nationals talked about how cheap they could bring the train back and how they'd definitely bring the train back when they got into power. And so then, of course, when they got into power, I was thinking, oh, isn't it great? We're going to get our train back. The next thing we hear, they're saying that it's unaffordable as well, and it's going to cost $953 million to reinstate the train. And there was a Greens MP from Sydney came up, and she told us that they were reinstating trains in Victoria for $265,000 per kilometre. And the Arup report, which said, you know, our train was going to cost $953 million, that works out to approximately $7 million per kilometre. At that moment, it hit me that we'd been lied to.
There's a classic example of political interference. There's an example of lobbyists, road lobbyists, trucking lobbyists, paying enormous amounts of funds as donations to get what they want.
The Greiner government in 1988 commissioned Booz Allen and Hamilton consultants to prepare a report into New South Wales rail services. On purely economic grounds, the report recommended closing all country passenger services as unprofitable. However, there was a public outcry. After the rail service closed in 2004, the Arup Group was commissioned to do a study on the Tinton Bar to Ewingsdale upgrade. In 1992, Greiner became a board member of Balderstone Road Building Company. Between 1998 and 2010, Balderstone donated over $655,000 to the major parties. Barry O'Farrell appointed Nick Greiner as Chairman of Infrastructure New South Wales in May 2011, and in August 2011, Balderstone was awarded the $862 million contract for the highway upgrade. In September 2011, Transport New South Wales commissioned the Arup Group to do the rail study, which was released in 2013, recommending against rail services purely on economic grounds. In 2013, Nick Greiner resigned from Infrastructure New South Wales after 2 years as chair. The motorway lobby has donated more than $13 million to the major parties over 15 years. These donations have coincided with federal and state governments approving billions of dollars to major road projects built by these companies.
It is clear the government's preference is to rip up the existing rail line and effectively privatise the corridor for a rail trail. The effect of this decision would be to permanently shut off the ability to use this corridor, which links many of our region's major centres and important tourism locations for passenger rail services. From a tourism perspective, restoring a rail service makes significant economic sense for our region and can deliver both visitors and local people travelling for jobs. The Greens are not opposed to a tourist bike trail running alongside the rail corridor and the new opportunities for tourism and recreation that a multimodal rail corridor would bring. But to rip up an important piece of community infrastructure, particularly while there is still no real plan to invest in a public transport strategy for the next 50 years in our region, would be a retrograde step.
For this line here, the Casino Mooloolaba Rail Corridor could become a great tourist attraction. This area has 4.6 million visitors a year. Don't you think that they'd like to have a service to ride on, to visit our areas?
How we move around and provide access to our older residents, our younger residents, our visitors, our workers, the teenagers who want to go and visit their friends. In a way, what we provide them helps define us. If it's simply paving more roads and putting more cars and making them wait in traffic while the environmental costs grow, that says a lot about our priorities. I think our community, both economically and environmentally, see that this rail corridor can be a real crucial part of our future going forward. It allows people to connect to our villages and our towns without having to have a car, without sitting on our roads.
I rise today on behalf of the Greens to speak to the Transport Administration Amendment Closure of Railway Lines in Northern Rivers Bill 2020. A bill being rammed through Parliament without consultation with the relevant communities that, if passed in its current form, would see a rail line that has serviced the Northern Rivers for over 110 years ripped up and never to return. There has been no meaningful consultation with relevant communities in the Northern Rivers in relation to the bill. The government, of course, claims to have provided ample opportunity for consultation, but revelations from the former Mayor of Tweed, Katie Milne, show that the only state government consultation undertaken in her area involved 40 hand-picked participants, including 26 directly affected adjacent landholders, 13 organisations and MP Thomas George. Where were the town hall meetings? Where was any meaningful attempt at online consultation, or for people and residents to be given the chance to make submissions about what happens in their own towns and region?
Sadly, that is what happened. The two major parties rammed through the legislation through New South Wales Parliament to close the two ends of our Casino to Mooloolaba line.
One of the reasons why we believe it's important to bring the railway back into use is because it'll cut carbon emissions hugely. The Deloitte report of 2011 states that Australia is now the most intensive user of road freight in the world, and it has the least energy efficient road passenger transport among members of the International Energy Association. Did you know that Kevin Hogan from the Nationals has offered $17.4 million to pay for a bike trail to go on top of the railway between Casino and Lismore?
17 million, 0.4 for a bike path. And it's not even a marginal seat.
Yeah, and the thing is, that amount of money could actually pay to repair the railway tracks and have trains running again. It's ridiculous.
It is, isn't it? It doesn't make sense.
But it really doesn't seem like the Nationals care that much about cutting emissions. It seems like they'd much rather support the oil companies and road companies. You know, the Byron Solar Train is zero emissions. It's
Yes.
fantastic. But of course, there's so much railway land in Byron Bay that property developers just want to get their hands on it. And as we've been hearing, big companies have easy access to politicians.
Yes, yeah, that's true. And it doesn't matter about the ordinary people, what they want, what they would like. They don't listen to people.
The Gold Coast Light Rail is coming down to Tweed. The Olympics is coming to Brisbane. Now is not the time to be ripping up a railway that could connect us with Queensland. It's just crazy. Our population is booming. You know, there would be so many environmental benefits and economic and social benefits. We don't want to lose it. But the thing is, we have never been asked in this region whether we want to have trains running again or just have a bike path instead.
It is a credit to those who maintained this line in its latter days before services were ceased. In New South Wales we have many major regional centres: Bathurst, Dubbo, Tamworth, Armidale, Wagga Wagga, Albury. All these places, all these major regional areas have rail services still going to them, except one, and that is Lismore. So why not re-establish the line back to Lismore, and let's get the ground starting to roll again for services back up to Mooloolaba and even extension on to the Gold Coast.
What I'd like to ask is if you could join our group and help us fight to save our railway track. And it'd be great if you could also talk to your local council candidates about whether or not they support saving the rail. We need to do everything we can before it's too late. Please help. Thank you.